Hello, Ohayo gozaimasu, and I find myself, and you consequently find me, out of doors again after a weird few days in which the weather has seemingly been unable to decide whether it's July or in fact sort of early autumn, October, where we've had days that have been cloudy and cool for a while, and then suddenly, mid-20s and sunshine. I don't complain, but I'm out and about again, and thought I'd at least begin the video that I wanted to make, the video about Miwa Akihiro, and do a little more justice to this significant figure, this important figure in Japanese popular culture, a figure who straddled several divides professionally between being a recording artist, a performer and an actor, latterly a voice artist. For those of you who don't know, he provided voices in more than one Miyazaki film, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, I believe, among one or two others. Maybe Howl's Moving Castle. I should know that off the top of my head, and to my eternal discredit, I do not. But anyhow, a professional polymath, it may not be an overstatement to say, but also someone, of course, who straddled gender and sexuality based divides or oppositions. A drag performer, a transvestite, a homosexual man, not a transsexual man, and within the climate of cinema, I think could be argued to bridge a gap between mainstream filmmaking and alternative filmmaking. One is struck by the close sort of appearance in time of Black Lizard, the very famous, although these days seemingly little seen and available, Fukasaku Kinji sort of film noir based on an Edogawa Rampo novel or novella in 1968, and then this same year being name checked, not appearing in person, but significantly having his name checked, his actual name, not the professional name Miwa Akihiro, but Maruyama Akihiro, in that sort of, in many ways, groundbreaking and increasingly iconic cinematic deconstruction and intersection of sexuality and politics, that is Matsumoto Toshio's Funeral Parade of Roses. There's a brief scene in a bar in which the trans characters largely here. This is a film that is centered on trans characters largely, in which the characters talk about whether they prefer Maruyama, as they say, over other similar icons and performers. So while she is not in the film, the fact that there is this prominent sort of name check suggests that there is a kind of cultural conversance or conversance with and conversation over this figure and what she represents within. I mean, you couldn't get much further away from the mainstream than Funeral Parade of Roses. So there's obviously a sense that Matsumoto and others want to highlight, want to explore, want to talk about what Miwa Maruyama means or may mean within the context of their particular society, politics, culture. So this is someone who I think first and foremost was famous as a recording artist, a singer, but who very quickly and through not many sort of film appearances, there wasn't or isn't a kind of extended legacy of cinematic performances. There are very few, comparatively few, very notable and noteworthy appearances that fostered at least the perception of this person, this artist, engaging with the sort of prevailing social, political and cultural winds of different eras. I think it's telling that the juxtaposition that I just talked about between Black Lizard and Funeral Parade of Roses comes around 1968, the most in Japan as in many other countries around the world, specifically France. The sort of apex point of political and social unrest, of youthful disaffection, of outright sort of rejection of mainstream politics. Because this seems to be encoded in reactions to these films, even though Black Lizard, which is by far the most significant in Miwa's career of the two, given that she essays the lead role, or one of the two lead roles in this film. This is a film that seems incredibly cut off from contemporary society. It's a film whose style and narrative seem to take place sort of through a glass darkly. It's a film that seems to take place in a kind of other world. It's not, of course, taking place in a literal other world, but it feels very much like it is playing out in some kind of alternate dimension or alternate universe that is in some ways a kind of mirror image of our own. And so the fact that you've got a sort of femme fatale figure played by essentially a man perhaps reflects this sense of mirroring our own world and our own society and politics, or society and politics in 1968. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here that I think it's something that many sort of I don't know, heteronormative figures, for want of a better word, and I wouldn't use that term pejoratively as some do, but for a white, fairly middle class heterosexual male, someone now who seems to be the butt of all jokes and who takes the blame for all ills, I'm slightly aware that I am sort of reading, as it were, connotative or maybe even symbolic imperatives and weight to this figure, which, you know, people from, for instance, the LGBTQ plus crowd, that sounds a little bit derogatory, crowd, I don't mean it in any such way, but anyone from that spectator base, let's say, wouldn't necessarily see a kind of symbolic or a figurative cachet in such a performer. And I think what's important from the point of view of Black Lizard is that there is no there's no nod, there's no wink, there's no obvious sort of meta dimension to the film. In fact, I think such is Miwa's performance and persona. I think you could actually conceivably watch this film and not know that this is a man playing the female role. This is a genre film. Fukasaku was the perfect director for this because he's someone who has a sort of conversance through developing his career as a director in the 1960s with sort of post-classicism. Hopefully you can all still hear me okay. As I'm just walking under a sort of motorway overpass and it's echoing the traffic. But Fukasaku had sort of one foot in post-classicism and another in genre cinema. This is why he went on to revolutionise Yakuza films in the 1970s. So, although there are these sort of intimations of alternative cinematic practice, I think, in Black Lizard, I also think that it's perhaps even more remarkable for just being a sort of film noir and not kowtowing to any sense that that Miwa Maruyama is a sort of icon or symbol of, you know, alternative practices, shall we say, be they social, sexual, cinematic. So I think there's a really interesting and important sense that this film sort of encompasses these two approaches, the approach that I may have, where I may be likely to read symbolic import into her persona, and those who would just see this as a film noir and a femme fatale character. in what becomes actually more of a sort of tragic romance. Fukasaku takes this element of Edogawa's source and elongates and elaborates on it quite wonderfully in this film. So it's perfectly possible to have this sort of transparency where the film and its, or some of its spectators are concerned, that you aren't, there's no nod or wink, there's no making up to audiences to try and see sort of symbolic significance in this figure. It is just a film noir with a femme fatale. So it kind of normalizes these figures, like someone's having a fire or a barbecue has gone out of control. It really effectively sort of effaces any sense of making any sort of political point about Miwa Maruyama, which is really significant. I mean, one of the things about race or gender in particular that I often find problematic, and again that's speaking as a, you know, as a heteronormative commentator, what I find problematic is when blackness or, I don't know, homosexuality or femininity is kind of underlined, and a lot is made of a black person being such and such, or a woman being such and such, which is why I always really sort of bang my head when people talk about making a sort of female James Bond film, or when we get things like the female Oceans picture or what have you, where something that is kind of self-consciously celebrating femininity and women, but doing it in a way that is forever kind of indexed to a sort of male quote-unquote original. So it's seen as a kind of facsimile, or it feels to me at least like some kind of copy or reworking of a male original, even though I use those terms, you know. I'm going to turn around here and get the sun in front of me. So that's a problem for me, and it's always been a problem, and Black Lizard beautifully eschews that, and very little is made of Miwa's status as a sort of transvestite or a homosexual icon or performer. Very little, but not nothing, because this Black Lizard is based actually not directly on Edogawa Rampo's source material, the novella Black Lizard. It's based principally, or it's let's say refracted through the lens of a theatrical adaptation by none other than Mishima Yukio, who provides a cameo in the film towards the end, and who actually at the time was Miwa's lover. So it doesn't entirely efface its politics, its alternativeness, for want of a better term. That's a little bit clunky, I apologise. So it's kind of, it does have one foot in both camps, if you like. This from a country that has, let's say, a very, very ingrained practice of kind of necessity as much as sort of artistic proclivity of female impersonators, of female roles being undertaken by men on the stage. particularly the kabuki stage. This is something that has, I think cinema has reflected this on occasion. Those of you who know Ishikawa Kon's great film An Actor's Revenge will be familiar with this. Something like Summer Vacation 1985, beautiful film from the 1980s, will have some idea of how cinema has drawn on this theatrical tradition. But again, the point is, and let me just say that Japan is by no means, alone in this regard. The Shakespearean stage had female impersonators. The Elizabethan stage, it's been a feature of theatre and cinema in China, so it's not specifically Japanese. But with that lineage behind it, I think the way that Black Lizard, which is about, for those of you who haven't seen it, the film revolves around the sort of cat and mouse between a master criminal and the author's most famous creation, his sort of Sherlock Holmes, if you like, Akechi Kogoro, Japan's greatest detective. Something of a problematic creation, but but I may come back to that or do another video. There's this constant sense that the Black Lizard of the title, who is the femme fatale figure, the Miwa figure, she's trying to steal a very precious jewel, and she wants to kidnap the daughter of the man who owns it, a very wealthy businessman. And the detective is brought in to prevent this, and there's a very strong back and forth between them, teasing each other, and I do mean that in the sense of a kind of sexual way, as much as trying to get one up on each other through either stealing or thwarting the stealing of this particular jewel. So it has this sort of it has this double address, if you like, and again, that's the film has that, and Miwa has that, which is why the casting is so perfect. This double address to seeing the film as a noir or as a love story, a heterosexual love story, and there's nothing about the character of the Black Lizard that necessarily, at least overtly, sort of frustrates or negates any sense of this being a heterosexual love story. But yet there are these moments, there's the Mishima angle in particular, that suggest something more. So film noir or love story, heterosexual love story, or a kind of generic digestion of alternative forms and norms, perhaps. That's what's so great here. I'm going to draw this to a close for now, because I've gone on for a little bit, and there's more I want to say about this figure. Hopefully I've whet your appetite. Go out and see Black Lizard if you haven't seen it. Try and see the follow-up that Kusaku and Miwa made, Black Rose Mansion, which was very much capitalising on the success of Black Lizard. And I'll return to you with a part 2 about Miwa cinema culture in Japan. So with that in mind, thank you very much for watching. I hope you can hear this okay. Otherwise I've just been wandering about talking to myself for 20 minutes for no good reason at all. But until the next time, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment, argue with me, chastise me, and Thank you very much. I'll see you again really soon for another video. Goodbye for now.